Huge monsters started attacking them, and Domitianus's lover had his head bitten clean off right then and there. The scene was beyond brutal. Water slowly filled the boat, and the giant crocodile jumped and dragged the consul underwater. This sight made the consul's wife so scared she was completely frozen, like she'd been sprayed with super glue. The giant crocodile underwater was munching on bones, and the scene was ferocious. Do you know how people hunted during the Roman Empire? A group of hunters on the vast prairie spotted 7 lions, so they slowly approached. These seasoned hunters always found the best position by observing the terrain. They would drive the lions towards a cliff, leaving the beasts with nowhere to escape. When the lions realized what was happening, the hunters had already surrounded them. One of the hunters intentionally exposed a weakness, making the alpha lion think these guys were easy prey and attack him. But who would have guessed? The truly skilled hunters often appear as bait. As the lion pounced, a huge net appeared right in front of it, and they caught it. So what did they capture these lions for? You got it. It was for the Roman Colosseum. So, what period was this? It was 79 AD. The emperor at the time was Vespasian, and this was the last year of his reign. That year, a lot of crazy events took place in Rome. It was the height of Roman power and one of the rare times when almost all of Europe was unified. The Jewish people were facing brutal oppression from the Romans, so you saw a lot of ordinary folks ready to rise and rebel. It was also after Vespasian's time that the Jewish people gradually gained their independence. It was because of these uprisings that the Romans hated them to the core. To help calm these riots, Vespasian had the Flavian Amphitheater rebuilt, which we know as the Colosseum, in the Roman Empire. There were also some incredibly strong and ripped individuals, and one name that's forever etched in Roman history is Scorpus. Back then, Sparta had already been conquered by Rome, and these powerful warriors were all brought to the arena. When the war drums sounded, the Spartan warriors would be sent into the arena because a new challenger army had arrived at the foot of the Roman city. This scene lets the whole city know that a dramatic battle is about to go down. A few young guys were surrounding a gladiator, and it looked like he had become an idol to these youths. In the imperial palace, Vespasian was getting dressed in new clothes. His youngest son, Domitian, was standing by, talking up the strengths of each of the challenging teams this time, but it seemed like these kinds of fights didn't excite Vespasian anymore. In a secret place, there was a room used for betting, and the casino boss was a guy named Tenex. He grew up in this kind of dark environment from a young age and gradually built up his power. The blue team, Scorpus, were gladiators trained by him. In this place, there were a lot of gamblers who had lost so much they didn't even have their underwear left. There was even a nobleman who went to a fortune teller to get a prediction, but he had no idea it was all a setup. After hearing the fortune teller's result, he bet on an ancient book. Tenex had been eyeing this ancient book for a long time, and you could tell it wasn't an ordinary book. After everything was ready, Vespasian, along with Domitian, headed to the arena. The place was packed, and you gotta say, this Roman Colosseum was seriously massive. Vespasian waved to everyone, and at this moment, a big guy stepped out and loudly introduced the teams that would be competing. There were 4 teams in total. The white team, Xenon, who looked like they had some seriously good gear and some handsome members. Second was the blue team, Scorpio, from the Olympics. You could tell from the crowd's cheers that this team was super popular. The other 2 teams were the red team and the green team. When the handkerchief dropped and the gates opened, all the teams rushed forward. As expected, Scorpio and Xenon had the fastest horses, so they took the lead and finished the first lap first. But just then, danger struck. A wheel flew into the air and nearly hit Scorpus. The chariot behind wasn't so lucky and got smashed to pieces instantly. In no time, people came out to clean up the wrecked chariots, but one of the warriors was still staggering to his feet. Just then, a chariot that had finished the lap came speeding towards him and ran him straight over. Just looking at that hit, you knew he was out of the game. Right now, the white team, Xenon, was leading the pack, while the blue team, Scorpus, was still trailing behind. When almost everyone thought he would fail, a turning point appeared. The scene cuts to Vespasian and his eldest son, Titus, who has just arrived late. Titus was in charge of military affairs and wasn't interested in the arena. His tardiness made his father extremely angry. At this point, Domitianus tells his brother that these unruly people need bread and games. Titus doesn't even bother arguing with his younger brother because it seems he looks down on him. Back at the arena, the Scorpio team has now reached the bend. It was clear that the blue and red teams had given up trying to catch up, and there was only one lap left. The fish statues in the arena started spraying water, and the moment of tension arrived. The blue team started urging their horses on, getting faster and faster, and soon caught up to the red team and also overtook the green team. As they reached the next bend, Scorpius was right on the white team's tail. At the last moment, no one expected Scorpius to overtake Xenon. Scorpius won the championship in this competition. Some people were happy and some were sad. 10X was secretly thrilled because he had made another huge pile of money. The guy who bet according to the fortune teller's advice was bawling his eyes out because he had lost almost all of his possessions. At this moment, Vespasian was also getting ready to leave. Titus wanted to continue explaining why he was late, but his father stopped him. Vespasian told Titus to come to his room to talk privately because scolding shouldn't be done in front of the crowd. Domitianus had a smug smile, which showed the clear difference in the personalities of the two sons. As the crowd dispersed, 10X entered the gambling den, grabbed the money bag, and handed it to the fortune teller. It was clear that the fortune teller had been bought off by him from the beginning. The man who lost the bet had lost everything, and even lost his love. Scorpio's real name was Scorpus. He saw his teammate fall and offered a prayer for him, understanding that next time it could be him lying there. As for Vespasian, he began to lecture Titus because he hadn't dealt with the Jewish revolt on time. What made the father even more furious was that Titus was involved with a Jewish woman. Because of this, Vespasian repeatedly told his son to get rid of her, but it was obvious Titus didn't realize the danger. At the workers' camp, the veiled Jewish queen entered and asked the elders if the Romans had distributed food on time. The information she received was that they had given out some food, but not enough for everyone. The queen revealed inside information from the Romans, saying that the Romans themselves didn't have enough food to eat their fill. But the elders didn't believe it. They believed that the love between the queen and the Roman prince had made her betray her people. At the same time, the prince also received extremely important information. Vespasian had no intention of passing the throne to the military officer, but was planning to give it to his younger brother. Naturally, Vespasian was a wise man. He couldn't reveal his intentions while he was still alive, as that would cause discord between the two brothers. So, he said that he would choose him as his heir, but first he had to obey his commands. Of course, it was still about the Jewish queen. He ordered Titus to banish her from Rome. And would Titus exile the Jewish queen? Get rid of her, Titus replied perfunctorily. I'll consider it. If a slave in Roman times committed murder, what would be the consequences? The outcome will be something you would never expect. The slave girl Aura assassinated a guard, but what she didn't know was that this act of hers would jeopardize the lives of her entire family. Soon enough, she and her sister Jula were captured because in Rome, murder was a serious crime. So they were going to be sent to another place for harsh labor punishment. While waiting to board the ship at the port, their brother Kwame found them. Kwame was the one who had captured the White Lion King. He came to this port to deliver the White Lion to Rome, but never expected to find his two sisters had been arrested. Kwame intended to help his sisters escape, but the brother was too impulsive in this situation, so there was no chance of escape. Before he could even explain, he was seized by the Roman soldiers, and from here the wheels of fate began to turn. At the same time, there was another woman, and she was the mother of 3 children. Kala brought her last possessions to the soldiers and found her 3 children. This mother, Kala, was very brave. She was heartbroken to learn that her son had also been arrested, but this was not the time for sadness. She told her son the plan, and told him to show that he was very good at fighting. As long as her son truly could fight, these people would not take them to the mountain, because Kala knew that those who were taken there never returned. But her son got scared as soon as he saw the giants. Time was running out, so Kala encouraged her son, believing that he could defeat those 3. At this moment, the soldiers discovered the mother and dragged her away. Her son didn't disappoint his mother. He rushed out of the crowd, charged straight at the giants, and attacked relentlessly, knocking down all 3. At this point, the Roman officer also noticed Kwame and called him over. Stop. He asked why he did that. Kwame followed his mother's instructions and said that he wanted to go to the Roman Colosseum to perform for the emperor. The officer burst out laughing when he heard this, because how dare a slave make such a request? However, at this moment, the officer did need more gladiators, so he agreed to take him to the Roman Colosseum. Right then, Kwame made another request. He wanted his two sisters to be brought to Rome with him as well, or else he would end his life right there. The officer saw the two young girls and immediately thought of a way to make more money. Selling them to the nobles would be very profitable. So he agreed to let all three go to Rome. The mother saw this outcome and smiled faintly, but she also understood that the road to saving her children was still very long. The scene returns to the Roman Colosseum, and Scorpus is beside the shattered chariot. He found that the safety pin had been deliberately damaged, proving that his teammate's departure was not an accident, but intentional murder. After grasping this important clue, he immediately went to find 10x. At this time, 10x was storing today's winnings along with a contract in his secret room. This room was filled with various contracts, and these contracts were for land and houses in Rome. So why did 10x want to collect so much real estate? Because he had his ambition, and that was the ambition to seize the throne of the Roman emperor. Just then, he noticed a very familiar bronze statue in his room, which immediately put 10x on alert. As he was looking around, there was a knock on the door, and the person who arrived was Scorpus. 10x opened the door and was startled, but naturally, he wouldn't say anything about his room being broken into by a thief. Scorpus presented evidence of the sabotage linchpin and wanted to prove that the death of his teammate was an intentional murder. But 10x told Scorpus that they had a more important plan, a plan that could help them become the Roman emperor. In the past, Vespasian was just a boy tending donkeys, but eventually sat on the throne of the Roman Empire. However, it seemed that Scorpus wasn't interested in the throne of the Roman Empire and only wanted to survive. Just then, he also noticed a bronze statue on the table, and this statue was very similar to the horse in his hometown. 10x snatched the statue, then ushered Scorpus outside and told him to get some rest. As he left, Scorpus reminded 10x that someone was plotting to kill them, and 10x promised he would investigate it. That very night, 10x went to the house of the chariot repairman and dragged him out of bed, which greatly frightened the man's wife and daughter. 10x warned them not to scream. Then he took out the linchpin and interrogated the repairman, asking who had ordered him to do this. The repairman hurriedly said that he didn't know anything. 10x immediately pulled out a knife, ready to take care of him right there. Right then, the daughter spoke up and said she knew who did it. It was Lucius, and that person was currently at the shop. 10x gently slapped the repairman's face and said that his daughter had saved his life. After that, 10x went to the hotel and found Lucius. When they saw 10x, they were all on guard. 10x slowly approached and told them that he was the boss there and demanded they reveal who had ordered them to assassinate his gladiator. Lucius was terrified but still pretended to be tough, saying that he knew 10x's name, but that he came from a place even more powerful than Rome. At this moment, 10x still hadn't figured out who was behind everything, so he didn't kill the guy and just smiled. After learning the guy's name was Lucius, he left. Lucius thought his words had scared 10x away, but 10x's real purpose was to keep an eye on the guy, and he always wanted to investigate the person pulling the strings. The scene cuts back to the three siblings, Kwame, and at this point, they had entered Roman territory, and outside the city, there were many people impaled on wooden stakes. Kwame dragged the White Lion King along as he entered the city of Rome. As soon as they entered the city, his two sisters were taken to the market to wait for buyers. At this moment, Kwame's mother, Kala, also secretly returned because she knew that if she wanted to save her two daughters, she would need a lot of money. After Kwame was separated from his sisters, he went to the arena, and the animal trainer there saw the White Lion King. When the white cloth was pulled down, even the animal trainer was amazed because, in his entire life, he had never seen such a majestic lion. And clearly, they were willing to pay a very high price. Right then, the White Lion King saw Kwame and let out a mighty roar towards Kwame, which greatly surprised the animal trainer. The officer beside him said the guy's name was Kwame, and that he was the one who captured this white lion. It looked like Kwame would have to stay at the arena. Kala, to earn money, started selling all her jewelry. While she was selling her jewelry, she was noticed by Lucius. It was clear that this guy was not a good person. After Kala got the money and stepped outside, She was followed by Lucius's men. Calla was blocked by them in an alley. Just when they were about to humiliate her, the Roman patrol approached, which helped Calla avoid being disgraced. At this time, Kwame had been taken to the arena. When the gigantic, majestic structure truly appeared before his eyes, Kwame couldn't help but be amazed. He entered the arena, and Domitianus was selecting gladiators there. When Kwame entered, none of them paid any attention to this small guy. Just as they were about to reject him, the officer began to tell his story. He was the one who captured the white lion and also defeated 3 giants. To test the truth, Domitianus called Kwame out to duel with his man. Whether in terms of physique or strength, it was obvious that Kwame was much weaker than his opponent. So in the first round, Kwame was knocked to the ground. In the second round, Kwame took down the giant. Entering the third round, Kwame decisively broke the wooden sword because he preferred to use a shorter sword. Domitianus also had the giant switch to an iron sword, and this time their battle was truly spectacular. Kwame found an opening and easily defeated the giant. Just as he was about to thrust the wooden sword into the giant's neck, Domitianus stopped him, and this also made him extremely angry. When he stepped down, the person beside him said, "Isn't this the gladiator you've been looking for?" Meaning not to execute Kwame out of anger. But Domitianus began to insult Kwame, calling him a slave from a dirty place like South Africa coming to Rome. And even if he was a brave lion catcher, in his eyes, he was just a maggot. These insults made Kwame's veins bulge, and he immediately pushed Domitianus away. Domitianus didn't execute Kwame, but instead bought him. What Domitianus didn't expect was that this man would change his destiny. Who were the best traders of the Roman Empire? They weren't Arabs, but Italians. These 3 brothers were experts in finding rare horses from all over and transporting them back to Rome to sell to the arena because, in every arena match, many horses were injured or killed, so many more were needed. These 3 brothers greatly admired Scorpus. When Scorpus won the championship in the match, the 3 brothers also bought tickets to watch and witness the whole event. Among them, the youngest brother, Elia, thanks to the help of the horse groom, got to meet the Scorpus team. Scorpus also agreed to try out the horses they brought tomorrow afternoon, so they had to stay in Rome. The horse groom helped them find a room for 5 coins a night. The 3 brothers squeezed into the cramped space and dreamed that one day they would be famous around the world like Scorpus. The next afternoon, Scorpus was late, making the 3 brothers anxiously wait. But fortunately, Scorpus kept his promise and came to the arena. After getting on the chariot, he immediately sped off at an extremely fast pace. These 4 white horses were something else because, with just a few gentle controls, they ran like the wind. This feeling greatly surprised Scorpus because he felt a speed he had never experienced before. After running 1 lap, he decided to buy these horses, but there was one condition. The 3 brothers had to stay and take care of and train these horses for him. The 2 older brothers were very happy, but the youngest, Elia, didn't agree because when they left Italy, they had promised to sell the horses and then return home. Now that the horses were sold, they should go back, because their parents were still waiting for them at home. But the 2 older brothers clearly understood that this was the best opportunity for them to advance. So they persuaded Elia to stay and witness a turbulent year of the Roman Empire together. Elia angrily left, while the 2 brothers still agreed with Scorpus that all 3 of them would stay. After the handshake, Scorpus immediately ran to Tenex because, of course, he had to make Tenex pay. He said that these were the fastest horses he had ever seen in his life. And of course, Tenex wasn't stingy. After all, good horses could bring him more benefits. Having acquired the new horses, Tenex knew his plan could begin. Tenex took the contract to the house of the official Marcus because he knew that in the city of Rome, countless people wanted to get these lands. And Marcus was one of those ambitious people. After confirming that these contracts were real, Tenex started asking for 700,000. Marcus felt it was ridiculous and felt it wasn't worth that amount. Tenex was a master negotiator, so he raised the price again to 800,000. Marcus immediately showed him the door, no longer intending to make a deal. As he left, Tenex said one sentence: "Perhaps the white team needs this contract more." As soon as he heard the mention of his sworn enemy, Marcus immediately called him back and finally agreed on a price of 900,000 coins. It seems the value of some things is also tied to grudges. Now it belongs to him. After Tenex left, he immediately went to Domitianus. 10x told him to send all his subordinates out, then told Domitianus that he needed money right now, and a lot of it. How did he know that Domitianus needed money? It was because Domitianus also frequently gambled and seemed to lose every time. Domitianus was easily provoked, so he asked 10x if he wasn't afraid that he would kill him. 10x had prepared, so he wasn't scared at all, and even told him the current plan right away. Currently, Scorpus wanted to leave the blue team and then form a new team, so he hoped Domitianus would participate. As soon as Domitianus heard that Scorpus would reestablish the team, he immediately agreed because he knew Scorpus's ability well. At this time, 10x began to put forward conditions. To establish a new team, they needed written permission from the Empire, and they needed Domitianus to take care of these documents. The benefit for Domitianus was that he would own half of the team's shares and own everything the team could bring. Currently, the thing Domitianus was most concerned about was the issue of horses. 10x firmly guaranteed that they now owned the best horses. Now, with Scorpus's driving ability, they would never lose again. 10x was truly a genius of persuasion, and Domitianus was drawn into this plan. He accepted this plan and told 10x that if he dared to deceive him, he would cut off his head. Clearly, in the end, Domitianus's arrogance would lead him to a dead end. Something terrible was happening in the stable, and the white horses were restless. At this time, Elia had packed his luggage, intending to leave Rome for Italy the next day. Of course, in those days, it wasn't called Italy but Venice. The two brothers were still trying their best to persuade him, hoping their younger brother could stay. After all, here they had food, drink, and even beautiful women to keep them company. More importantly, they could work with their idol. If they missed such an opportunity, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. Elliot didn't care about those things because he only remembered that when he left home, he promised his father that he would return immediately after selling the horses. Just as they were talking, someone came to call them to the stable to check. The three brothers had just entered the stable when they froze. All the white horses had fallen and were dying, and this proved that someone had poisoned them. Surely, Scorpus's desire to leave the blue team had been exposed, leading to such an act of revenge. 10x also heard this news and led Scorpus to the stable. Just when everyone was still surprised, no one expected that at this time, a subordinate would bring even more terrifying news. Domitianus came here personally because he wanted to see with his own eyes whether the horses 10x spoke of were real or not. No one expected that at this moment. The white horses were lying all over the ground. 10x told the three brothers that they must find a way, and when Domitianus arrived, they had to handle it smoothly. They pulled down all the curtains, so they started to hang the horses up. 10x wanted to stop him, but Domitianus ignored him and entered the stable. Seeing them hanging the horses up, Domitianus approached and asked what was going on. They explained that they were fixing the horses' hooves, and Domitianus didn't suspect anything. He told Scorpus that next time he wanted to see the horses running in the arena, and after saying that, he left. This made 10x feel enormous pressure. 10x questioned Scorpus about whether he had told anyone about this. Scorpus said that at that time, besides him, the horse groom knew about this, and the person might have leaked this information. 10x realized that security had not been done well. After that, he arranged for Scorpus and the eldest brother Fonsoa to go find white horses to deal with Domitianus's inspection tomorrow. First, he led people to find the pharmacist because the pharmacist knew poisons, so the pharmacist was the most suspicious person. The pharmacist confessed everything. Someone had indeed bought poison from him. 10x led people to capture them in an alley. He left one person alive, but this person said that he also didn't know who ordered the poisoning. He only saw the deceased receive a letter in the corridor, and the palanquin carrying that letter was green and gold. Instead of dealing with the guy or sending him to meet his maker, 10x let him go. 10x returned to the stable to check the current condition of the horses. The horses were all dead, but the veterinarian was still trying to save them. 10x again ordered a subordinate, telling him to investigate the situation of all factions to see if any other horses had also been poisoned. In the stable, there were also two Italian merchants waiting. At this time, the second brother Andrea secretly told Elliot to pack his luggage neatly at night, wait for Fonsoa to return, and leave Rome together. No one expected that at this moment, Elliot would firmly want to stay, because these horses had problems. It was the time when they were needed most. Vespa also quickly decided to stay because as soon as he returned, he inadvertently helped a mother and child, even throwing the boy an apple. At least based on their appearance, they were all very beautiful and pleasing to the eye. The scene cuts back to the market in Rome. The two boys finally spotted the green and gold palanquin. They immediately followed it and went to the slave market. The boy hurriedly went to inform Tenex. In the slave market, there was also a familiar figure, Kwame's mother Kala. Last night, she had just recovered the money that had been stolen from her. You could see that this mother was very brave, but when she started bidding, she became anxious because, at this time, her youngest daughter was being auctioned at a price 10 times higher. She was thinking of spending 500 coins to buy back her daughter, but no one expected that the person in the palanquin would bid 3,000 coins. This price was far beyond Kala's ability. She could only stand by anxiously and watch her youngest daughter, Jula, being led away. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she couldn't leave because her eldest daughter, Aura, was still there. "I'm so sorry. Mom. She had to find a way to save Aura. No one expected Tenex to suddenly speak up, wanting to pay 500 coins to buy Aura. Even though Kala wanted to bid 1,000 coins at this time, the merchant saw that Tenex wanted to buy, so he didn't sell to her anymore, even though her price was higher. Just like that, Aura was taken away by Tenex. 1,000 coins. However, the contractor said, "She's already been sold." Mrs. Kala still didn't give up hope. No, 1,000 coins. I'll buy double." The contractor felt helpless. "Sorry, the transaction is already completed." So what was Tenex's purpose in buying the eldest daughter? Because he had been observing and discovered that the girl bought by the palanquin was the sister of this girl. Therefore, he intended to buy the older sister and then find out the identity of the person in the palanquin to be a spy for him. That night, Kala came knocking on Tenex's door. Tenex, because of the bronze statue incident, had become suspicious and worried. When he saw that the other person was Kala, he let her in. He stated his request. He said the person in the palanquin who bought her youngest daughter was the person he needed to find out about. If they could find out all the information from Jula, he would let them go and give them back their freedom. Kala understood that this was the condition for their survival, so she agreed to be a spy for him, but she also had a request. She and her daughter must not be bullied. Tenex wasn't interested in slaves, so he guaranteed that he wouldn't have any bad intentions towards them. After saying that, he even told them to sleep in the living room for the time being and closed the door to his room to sleep. What will be the fate of Kwame's family? In 79 AD, the Roman Emperor Vespasian knew he didn't have long to live, so he prepared for his death. What he worried about most at this time was his throne being usurped. Therefore, he called his two sons to his side and analyzed the current situation of Rome for them. He wasn't afraid of external enemies. What he worried about was the internal forces, so he had already clearly divided the right of inheritance. If he passed away, the throne of the Roman emperor would belong to his eldest son, Titus. Even though this news was already within Domitianus's expectations, when he heard his father say it, he couldn't help but feel jealous, which also laid the foundation for his later usurpation of the throne. The scene cuts back to Kwame, and now he has officially become a gladiator. His companion is the man who trained with him before. This man was very kind to Kwame and told him about the current situation in Rome, explaining who they were serving and letting him know that the only way to leave this place was to kill Domitianus. The seeds of Kwame's desire for freedom were sown from here. The next day, Scorpus and Fonso arrived at the foot of the volcano and found sulfur stones. This type of stone can detoxify, and this shows that this knowledge has been passed down from ancient times to the present. Fonsoa told Scorpus that one day he would become a hero like Scorpus. Scorpus told Fonsoa that no one can become me, so be mindful of that. At this moment, the crater of the volcano emitted a fiery glow. After obtaining the sulfur, they immediately returned, fed the sulfur to the horses, and waited for a miracle to happen. The scene cuts back to Kala. The next morning, she was given a task by Tenex's servant. First was to go to the house that bought her youngest daughter, and here Kala also met her youngest daughter again. After all, she had agreed to be a spy for Tenex, so naturally, she had to give some instructions to her youngest daughter. Seeing that her mother could come and go freely, Jula felt more at ease. When leaving, Kala needed to know where the arena was, so the maid showed her. Kala then quietly made her way to the arena, sneaked past the guards and hid herself, watching from the shadows. At this time, Kwame had just finished training, and he also noticed his mother standing in the corner. Kwame's roommate kept watch for him. Kwame didn't expect to meet his mother here, but this was not the time for conversation. Kala only told her son that his two sisters were fine and told him not to worry because she would find a way for them to meet. At this moment, the guards approached. Kala had no other choice but to hurry away, leaving her son looking on longingly. After a long night of waiting, the next morning they received good news. The white horse finally stood up. This made the three brothers extremely happy, and they immediately reported the news to Scorpus. At this time, 10X was having breakfast. As soon as he heard that the horses were well, he immediately went to the arena. At this moment, the two brothers were driving the chariots, speeding around the arena. After 10X confirmed that the horses were all right, he told Scorpus that now they would form a new team, so they needed more people, meaning he wanted to bring these three brothers under his wing. After Scorpus observed Fonso's skills, he told him that he could now join the team. "You can join us now." The two younger brothers were also very happy that their older brother had become a charioteer, and the scene cuts back to Kwame's sister Jula. At this time, she was in Marcus's house and was taken to the bedroom. She secretly observed the conversation between Marcus and his lover. In this clandestine conversation, there was an important clue. They were plotting to murder a man nicknamed Scorpio. When Marcus entered the bedroom, Jula pretended to reveal a red mark underneath, making them mistakenly believe that she was having her period. This was her mother's plan, and thanks to this, Jula avoided humiliation this time. At night, Jula secretly left Marcus's house and went to 10X's house. Her mother and older sister were both waiting there. She told 10X that Marcus was plotting to harm someone nicknamed Scorpio. 10X immediately understood who that was and told them to be very careful not to let anyone see them. After 10X left, the two sisters hugged each other tightly. From the moment they were separated, their fates had changed. So, could 10X save Scorpus? At this moment, Scorpus was being attacked, and after just a few blows, Scorpus was knocked down. Many people witnessed the scene of the bad guys stabbing a knife into Scorpus's stomach and then very expertly dragging his body away. All those who saw it knew that Scorpus had gone to heaven. Tomorrow there will be another match, and now that the blue team no longer has Scorpus, what will they do? That's right, they went to Xenon of the white team and offered 800,000 coins to invite him to switch to their team. Faced with such a high commission, Xenon agreed, but he had one condition. They needed to protect him from being killed by Leto. "You must protect me from being taken out," they replied. "We will do our best." Time quickly passed to the next day. When the war drum sounded in the arena, it also signaled that this match would be even more fierce. Domitianus entered his father's bedroom and saw him standing on the balcony. At this time, Vespasian was somewhat confused, and today he couldn't attend the arena as usual. Let's pay attention to the detail that this time Titus wasn't late, but arrived at the stands first. When he learned that his father couldn't attend due to poor health, he proactively sat on his father's throne. Even though Domitianus had 100 things he didn't agree with at this moment, he couldn't show it, because just yesterday he had secretly taken money from the treasury and was discovered by his older brother. Naturally, he took the money to bet on today. Because of Xenon's sudden change of heart, the white team side was thrown into chaos. Not only was Xenon no longer here, but even their chariot was gone, which made Leto furious. As they were preparing the chariot, two gladiators appeared in the arena. This was a performance they would give to everyone today. Almost everyone knew that for sure this time the dwarf warrior would lose his life. Andrea could only watch helplessly as everything happened. Indeed, after only a few rounds, the entire audience was extremely excited. The dwarf warrior was cut off at the leg, then his arm was cut off, and finally, his neck was severed. When this brutal scene appeared, the entire stand exploded. As the tall warrior walked in, he even laughed, covering Kwame's small body. Kwame and his roommate dragged the bodies of the dead warriors back. This was what they had agreed upon with that friend. But when Kwame entered the arena, he felt bewildered. Only now did he realize how small he was. At the time they were clearing the bodies, Leto went to the consul and blamed him for stealing his gladiator. But the consul didn't pay attention to other people's criticism. because he was the one in power. And another thing was that because the consul had bought 10x's contract, he could now sit in the front. It turned out that these seats weren't just for anyone to sit in as they please, because they were all subject to strict regulations. At this moment, no one expected 10x to walk to the front stage. Although his entourage didn't include women but only a few children, it didn't conceal his aristocratic aura. At the same time, the fat guy was introducing the people entering the arena. No one could have guessed that the first one to enter would be Xenon. When he saw Xenon in his chariot, Leto also recognized that the charioteer was his own man. The next person to come out was Scorpus. Everyone thought that he had been assassinated last night, but unexpectedly, he appeared in the arena. Everyone was surprised, and the most surprised person was the consul. He didn't expect Scorpus to still be alive. At this time, in the casino, many people came in and started betting on Scorpus. Face was such a good thing. How could Mrs. Kala pass it up? She took out her money and started betting. Since she also knew what 10x was planning, she bet big on Scorpus 1,000 coins. Kwame's mother watched this match through the crack in the door. Scorpus was very smart. He always followed behind Xenon of the blue team. When they reached the last lap, Scorpus of the gold team, with just one turn, caught up to Xenon. At this moment, everyone was tense, and Kwame's mother's heart was also pounding. At the last moment, Scorpus won the match by a hair's breadth. Some people were happy, and some were sad. The consul plotted so much but ultimately lost money, and he was furious inside. At this moment, 10x stood in front of everyone and took his winnings, making the white and blue teams burst with anger. When she returned to her betting area, Mrs. Kala had been waiting for 10x for a long time. She placed 2,000 coins in front of 10x and wanted to redeem her eldest daughter. But 10x didn't accept this money and told her that the ransom amount must be decided by him. At this time, she was a little nervous, but no one expected 10x to see her intelligence, wanting to keep her to work for him. If she worked for him for a year, the ransom would only be 1,500 coins, so she could still save 500 coins. Such a deal was already too kind, and just like that, her eldest daughter was freed. At this moment, the riot had been pushed to a climax because from before until now, there were always 4 teams, but now a 5th team, the gold team, had appeared, which they couldn't accept. 10x didn't care about these things and just had people stop the riot and then immediately leave. But how could a riot be quelled so easily? Because the number of people who lost bets this time was too large. Kwame, who was cremating bodies on the west wall, also saw the riot of the Roman people. At night, the eldest son Titus heard his father calling for him and immediately ran to the palace. At this time, Vespasian was about to die. At the moment before his death, both of his sons were not by his side. By the time they arrived, they could only see that their father had died standing up. Because the Roman Emperor Vespasian died in an upright position, the period of Vespasian's rule ended. During this period, the Jewish people would revolt. In the last days, although the Jewish people were divided, they began to walk on the path of reconstruction, although this process was very long. The terrifying thing in the Roman period was not the gladiators, but the scene of the beasts attacking the Jews. The Jews under Roman rule were the lowest class. They did hard labor all their lives. In the arena, they were even torn apart by lions, their bodies mangled, blood splattering everywhere. This sight thrilled the Romans, but also caused the Jewish queen on the stand to suffer greatly, wanting to stop everything. Titus also sent troops down to stop this, but even if the soldiers went down, they couldn't do anything to this white lion. The happiest person was Domitianus, the youngest son of King Vespasian, because all these things were arranged by him before his father, King Vespasian, died, and Titus smoothly ascended the throne. After all, he held military power, so the nobles didn't dare to act rashly. The 4 great families made a deal with Titus. Titus had to hold a coronation ceremony for his father similar to that of Emperor Caesar, and become the 4th emperor to be remembered forever. The consul agreed, but they had one request. The gold team's right to participate in the competition must be revoked, because the riot this time was also caused by the presence of the gold team. Just like that, they reached a mutually beneficial deal. On this side, while 10x was still celebrating his gold team, soldiers arrived and tore up the flag they had just hung up, then announced the order to strip them of their right to compete. The situation had changed. The most agitated person was Scorpus. If he couldn't participate in the match, it meant he would lose everything. He saw that 10X was about to lose, so he immediately wanted to leave the gold team. When 10X was advising Scorpus that he would regain the right to participate, Leto of the white team entered. He used a sharp knife to cut open the gold team's chariot. Seeing the white streak inside, he didn't listen to explanations and had people take these two chariots away. At this time, 10X could only watch helplessly and couldn't do anything else. At least he didn't accuse them of stealing, and of course, he didn't dare to accuse them either. Seeing that the chariots were also gone, Scorpus knew there was no chance to turn the tide, so he bluntly left 10X behind. So, did 10X abandon the gold team and leave? Not, because he was an ambitious person. At this time, he did a few things. First, he went to Domitianus to ask him what had happened. Domitianus told him about his brother's deal with the four great families, but then he told 10X that he had a way to make his team participate in the match. 10X went to the chariot maker and asked him if he had made the fastest chariot yet. The chariot maker said that he needed bamboo to create the fastest chariot, but because the body was too light, it couldn't pass inspection. 10X told him to continue working so he could take care of the approval. The scene changes to the coronation ceremony. The high priest began to bestow the title on King Vespasian. Mrs. Kala, below the stage, saw the scene of beautiful girls dressed in white clothes. She asked the steward what these girls were doing. The steward told her that one of those girls was the daughter of the consul, sent to the temple from a very young age to be a pure virgin, and had to remain chaste for the rest of her life or be executed. After the bestowing of the title, Titus officially took over the throne and became the new king of Rome, a descendant of Rome. The person standing and talking to you is Titus. Your emperor, your general, is a son in grief. He mentioned that his father established the Flavian dynasty, becoming the largest arena in the world. Now he wanted to create the largest river in the world, making the water of the Red Sea flow to Rome, so that the Romans would all have drinking water, and every Roman could bathe. That's right, he wanted to create the largest public bath in the world. So who were the workers who created these things? Of course, they were the Jews. Therefore, the queen no longer wanted to work and also blamed Titus for not releasing the Jews as agreed, making her people do more work. The Jewish queen was very disappointed with Titus. After the queen left, his subordinate told him that he had made two mistakes. One was paying too much attention to his lover, and the other was being too kind to his brother, meaning he had to deal with them, or else it would be difficult to keep the throne because history had clearly shown them that after each new king ascended the throne, the first right thing to do was to get rid of all close relatives. Therefore, the end point of politics always leads to hell. Otherwise, it would be like Titus, who ascended the throne but couldn't hold it for even a year and was even harmed by others. Titus knew very well that the riot in Rome this time was caused by his younger brother, but he didn't know that this younger brother would do even more terrible things next. Domitianus wasn't given the throne, so of course, he wasn't convinced. He blocked the food supply from being sent to the battlefield, making the soldiers hungry, which made Titus furious. But now the truth had not yet been investigated, so he could only ground his younger brother. Although his younger brother couldn't go out, it couldn't stop him from arranging things to happen in the arena. The consul entered Domitianus's room and introduced the fierce beasts from all over the world. There were red-bottomed baboons, which were extremely ferocious, and there were also dwarf demons from Asia. They were very short and could amuse the Romans, and there were hyenas. But these things didn't interest Domitianus at all. Finally, the consul took out the Lion King and said that it was the most ferocious beast he had ever encountered. It could swallow a person whole with just one bite. Its body was very large. Just mentioning the lion made Domitianus immediately interested. At any cost, he wanted to meet that Lion King. The giant Lion King, who was pure white from head to tail, was the king of Paleep and Ephesus. This ferocious beast would bring hell to earth, swallowing the blood of all that is good. You are a pervert, Bacchus. Alright, but the White Lion King sounds fun. I want to go see for myself. I have to escape from my cage. He began to disguise himself to avoid his brother's surveillance and went to the area for fierce beasts. Sure enough, he saw it. When he saw that beast, an evil plan sprouted in his heart. You're beautiful, truly magnificent, fatally beautiful. I know what to use. You four. Just as Domitianus was about to leave, the consul suddenly asked, who would this Lion King attack? Do you have to be so stupid? Do you think it's the Jews or the Gauls? The consul timidly replied, the Jews. The scene cuts to 10x's place. That day, he returned to his betting place and saw Mrs. Kala helping him clean up everything. 10x was still quietly observing everything when he discovered that Mrs. Kala was a capable person. She had significantly increased their income. That day, Domitianus came to 10x and needed him to deal with some people. Because the matter of him blocking the food ships was because he told Lucius to do it. Now he was very afraid that his brother would investigate and find out. So, before his brother investigated, he had to get rid of all these people. Therefore, Lucius was captured. Soon he confessed who was involved, but then they were also taken care of by 10x's people. Moreover, Domitianus learned important information from his lover, which was that his brother's lover was not welcome in the family. Many people believed that the queen had sold out the Jews for Titus, so Domitianus had a plan to divide them. He captured all the Jewish children and then told the adults that if they didn't cooperate, these children would all return to their motherland. This caused the scene of the white lion eating the Jews, making all the Jews believe that the queen had betrayed them. For the sake of the gods, stop these things. They are my people. The white lion will not actively attack people. But at this time, the animal trainer shouted, reminding the Jews, think of your children, quickly rush forward. This scene was too cruel. Stop it immediately. Titus didn't need to use his brain to know that this matter was caused by his younger brother, so he immediately went to his younger brother and wanted to kill him. But his younger brother was smart. He knew his older brother wouldn't kill him, so he proactively pointed the sword at his chest. Sure enough, his brother didn't kill him, and this was also when Titus missed the best opportunity. This was a great performance that shouldn't be missed. The scene cuts to Scorpus. After leaving 10x, he began to look for a new owner for himself. At this time, the blue team already had Xenon, so they wouldn't let Scorpus return. Scorpus then went to the other three teams, but the green team and the red team were just for show. They didn't want to win the match. The way they made money was to make their team lose, and now only the white team remained. At this time, Scorpus no longer had the right to set a price, so in the end, he joined the white team for only 60,000 coins. Otherwise, he would have nowhere else to choose. Having no other choice, he had to join the white team. When 10x happily told Scorpus that he could return to the arena, Scorpus no longer had a way back because he had just agreed with the white team. 10x was extremely disappointed. He could only wish Scorpus well, and just like that, two good teammates became enemies in the arena. When you were little, I watched you grow up. While you were still in Marcus's mess, he told everyone to ignore you. Congratulations on joining the white team.